So I'm going to talk about something today that has been very popular on YouTube, which is analyzing population shifts and population trends in real estate and what markets seem to be attracting the most people and what, for whatever reason it happens to be. And a lot of discussion is put into the Sunbelt. So states like Arizona, other states like Texas, Florida, Alabama, southern Alabama, and stuff like that, and Florida and South Carolina. But the thing that I'm going to propose to you is the value belt, and it is approximately the metropolitan areas along Interstate 40 through the United States. Now, there are some exceptions to my thesis on the value belt, which are obviously the smaller towns along I-40 aren't necessarily the most hopping locations, and stretching from west to east, we're going to go ahead and start out in California. I-40 starts out in Barstow, California, and anybody that's been to Barstow knows that there's absolutely nothing good about it. There's no redeeming characteristics of Barstow, so we aren't even going to talk about it, apart from those comments. All right, so Arizona, nothing much to mention. Maybe Kingman, not even really that big of a town. I think for my view, I think a town has to have at least 100,000 people, maybe. But Flagstaff is really expensive, less than 100,000 people, and is really expensive because of retirees and for other reasons. I'm writing off Flagstaff. So basically, we've written off the entire state of Arizona. So New Mexico, I-40 starts out in Gallup, which not exactly the greatest town. And I think anybody that's from Gallup will just sit there and listen to it like a smoker that's been smoking into like the age of 80, and they're sitting there and they're like, yep, yeah, it's not that good. But Albuquerque is actually a very surprising metropolitan area. It's kind of better than you'd think. It's the butt of a lot of jokes. A lot of people talk crap about it. A lot of people only know about it because of Breaking Bad. But the truth of the matter is that Albuquerque's fairly reasonable prices for buying into an area that has a relatively diversified economy. There's a lot of federal jobs. There's banks and some technology and other things that are there as a consequence of the Air Force and government presence that are there. But it's probably the cheapest like larger populated area inside of New Mexico. And one thing that people don't talk about is, I'm going to talk about some things that appeal to millennials. Number one, Albuquerque has Amtrak connections, so you can technically take the train other places in addition to having an international airport and road connections with the interstate that we're obviously talking about. There's a lot of sun for if you want to put solar panels on your house. The property values are fairly reasonable. You can find a lot of value inside of Albuquerque. And in addition to that, if you are a state resident for, I forget what period of time, you get a free 4-year degree paid for, basically at any public university inside of New Mexico, which is actually a pretty good deal, I think. Especially if you're raising kids, it's a pretty good deal for them to be raised up with that and then be able to go to college kind of tuition free and not have to do what I have to do and what I had to do and try to join the military to try to pay for college instead of taking out debt. Now, we're going to move along on I-40 and we're going to go down to Amarillo, Texas. Amarillo is the value play. Okay, listen, there's a lot of things to say about Amarillo. Quite frankly, it's a truck stop that attracted enough of a sufficient population of drifters to kind of evolve into a over 100,000 person city. But the truth of the matter is that it's some of the cheapest real estate prices inside of Texas. There's a lot of sun and there's a lot of wind for if you're trying to use alternative sources of power, and you can live a little bit outside of town and still have access to things. There's multiple colleges. There's a lot of healthcare facilities. Has a very diversified economy based on meat packaging and other things. There's the one plant manufacturing nuclear weapons in the United States is located on the outskirts of Amarillo. And personally, my opinion is, kind of joked about it before, that the reason why they put such a large nuclear target for other countries in Amarillo is because if it got bombed by the Tsar Bomba, nothing of value would be lost. But that's just me talking shit about Amarillo. Honestly, Amarillo is basically just kind of Oklahoma that ended up on the wrong side of the border. But other than that, Texas has no state income tax, which is a pretty good thing. And honestly, if I had to live in Texas again, it would probably veering towards Amarillo, honestly. So, Oklahoma City. Now, I am biased. I am an Okie. My family has been in Oklahoma for a while. I'll just say a while, a long time. But Oklahoma has specific advantages. Now, I've lived in a lot of places across the country, and I ended up picking Oklahoma not only because of family ties, and it's kind of familiar and I know it, but because the cost of living is incredibly low. Property values are incredibly low, but are still appreciating, in accordance with the overall increases in the national market. For example, I bought a house in 2019 for $109,000, put a little bit of work into it, but after about, 2024, my house is valued at about $196. So the property values are appreciating. That is something good, and that is something that I'm very happy for as a younger person. But extremely low cost of living. There is an Amtrak connection, and there's an Amtrak train that runs from north to south through the center of Oklahoma that will connect to the rest of the Amtrak system. There is a lot of sun and a lot of wind for if you're trying to go off grid or do other things like that. Personally, Oklahoma is my pick, and that's what I've chosen to do. But there's other cities on this list that I have that are pretty okay as well. Depending on what you're looking for, you have to do more research into these cities and try to figure out things. All of these locations have fairly kind of booming job markets. There's jobs and there's things to do inside of there. For work, it's kind of an easy path to get a higher paying job. You're not going to be just stuck moving to a place and then be stuck working in the service industry or low paid office jobs or anything like that. There's jobs that pay reasonably well in comparison to what the cost of living for the area happens to be. So, Arkansas, I-40 goes through Fort Smith, and Fort Smith can go suck a bag of dicks. Fort Smith is garbage. There's no redeeming characteristics of Fort Smith. So I'm not going to fucking talk about that. But it's actually the cheapest, probably larger metropolitan area inside of Arkansas. You see, you have Fayetteville and Bentonville. Really expensive. But as I-40 goes along, it goes through Little Rock, which Little Rock I've been to a couple of times, and it actually surprised me. I can't really comment on how diversified the economy is. There's a lot of businesses and stuff headquartered inside of Little Rock, and there's jobs and stuff, but there's also a lot of hood, which quite frankly, you shouldn't write off the hood. The hood is the value play. If you move to the hood and you put an ounce of effort into your kid, it doesn't matter if you have a garbage school nearby. Just take your kid to tutoring and other things like that. Your kid's going to be the valedictorian of George Washington Carver High School or whatever the heck the name of the school is. And they're going to be able to put that on their resumes and whatever else. And they're going to be able to move forward through their life. Because quite frankly, in the hood, a lot of people, kind of through no fault of their own, have a little bit less time to invest into their children, or they just don't care. So if you put an ounce of effort into your children, you put an ounce of effort into improving your property and your property value and building your wealth and everything else like that, Little Rock is actually a very good value play. There's stuff to do. It's interesting. So we move along I-40 into Tennessee. Tennessee is a good state. There's no state income tax. There's very low state taxes, possibly the lowest tax burden out of the lower 48 states, which is kind of that's a pretty good deal, honestly. But anyway, so we're going to go from left to right or west to east. Memphis. Memphis is incredibly diversified. It's located right on the Mississippi River. It is the cheapest large metropolitan area inside of Tennessee. There's a lot of hood, but once again, the hood is a value play. Go ahead and engage in gentrification. I don't care. FedEx is located and headquartered inside of Memphis, and a lot of shipping and transportation industries happen to be located inside of Memphis, and there's stuff there's stuff there. It's very interesting. It has a very interesting culture. It's very blues oriented in terms of its culture. It's got Memphis barbecue, and once again, I think I said it, the cheapest real estate inside of the state of Tennessee. Anyway, we move over to Knoxville, and honestly, fuck Knoxville. Knoxville is incredibly expensive for what you're actually getting, but it's the country music capital of the world, and you might be inclined to move there. That's kind of where like rich like country folk end up like retiring. They're like, oh, I'm gonna move to Nashville, yeah. Or if they decide to not move to Florida and go be a heathen down in a retirement community in the villages in Florida or whatever the heck. But anyway, so Knoxville is the next city on the list. A slightly less diversified economy, but it's kind of in between Memphis and Nashville in terms of prices and stuff. So, you know, getting in the center, you kind of take what you can from both sides and try to come to a pretty, like, a reasonable middle. But anyway, as I-40 goes along, it moves into North Carolina. Now, Winston-Salem, North Carolina has fairly low state taxes, and it has a pretty diversified economy. It doesn't have any like resource extraction or anything like that, and I don't know how much agriculture actually plays into the overall economy of the state, but it has a very service-oriented and high-tech economy nowadays, surprisingly. No one expected North Carolina to be doing that. But anyway, Winston-Salem, fairly diversified economy. It's the tobacco city, which, if you support that, go ahead. I definitely am pro-tobacco, even though I'm trying to quit, but still a supporter of people's right to do that. Anyway, there's the research triangle of, like, Durham and Raleigh inside of North Carolina, which has a crap ton of high-tech jobs and other things like that. If you are a college graduate looking for a job that is in a reasonably low cost of living area compared to the national average, the Research Triangle area in North Carolina might be a good pick. And anyway, North Carolina, it continues to move forward to Wilmington, which is the only beach or coastal kind of area in this list. So anyway, that is my opinion. I think that the value belt, as I'm saying it, along I-40 probably has a little bit more potential for lower to middle income people being able to move somewhere, start a life, and be able to do their own thing. Anyway, that's my opinion. Y'all have a good day.